Today I'm going to be doing my next wrap-up video. So I'm going to be wrapping up books 11 through 15 that I've read this year. So here we go. The first book that I read is Rumias by Christina Lauren. I have never read anything by these authors before, and I loved this book so much. It was super adorable. I thought the romance was just like so cute, and I really loved all of the Broadway elements that were in this book. It's definitely an unconventional situation that we have going on here. I really don't want to say like too much about what happens because I feel like you should go into this one not knowing that much about it. I think it'll make the story like more exciting. It's totally outlandish, but it's great. I love that it takes place in New York City, and I loved that there was such a heavy focus on music. I also really liked Holland as a main character. I thought that it was a really good story of self-discovery. She's kind of her own worst enemy, and she tends to let her own insecurities get in the way of her accomplishing things that she is totally capable of, or in the way of the things that she just desires. And then Calvin, who is the love interest, he is just like oozing with charm, and he has an Irish accent, and he is a very swoon-worthy love interest. He's incredibly talented, and he is a really caring and kind-hearted person. I also really love Holland's uncles. They're so cute together. I love their relationship. I love how close Holland is with them and how much they rely on each other. I thought that was really adorable. The one thing that I didn't like was Holland's best friend Lulu. She was such a pain. I just like could not stand her. Overall, this was a really cute romance, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. It was really different. You just have to like kind of look past some of the crazy things that happen, but overall it was really good. And there was one line in it in the beginning that I thought was so relatable. So like something happens to Holland and she is talking to the police about it, and they're like, "You didn't see this person's face?" And she's like, "Clearly you don't know what it's like to be a woman in New York. No, you don't look any crazy person in the face that's trying to bother you on the street," which yes, that's so true. So I really liked it. I thought this was really good. I loved the whole character arc of Holland, and I just loved how everything in this played out. And I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then I dropped everything and I read Save the Date by Morgan Matson. I was so excited to get this one in my hands because I love Morgan Matson, and despite this one coming out in June, I was like, I need to read it right now. So I did. Okay, so it followed a main character named Charlie who is very close with her family, and she is the youngest of everyone, so she hasn't gone out and like started living her own life yet. She's still just like very close and very tied to her family and to this house that she's lived in her whole life. But her parents are selling the house, and her entire family is gathering together there one last time for her older sister's wedding. Everything that could possibly go wrong during their wedding planning process does, and it was really fun to read about wedding planning without having to plan my own wedding because it's so stressful. Although I was feeling like secondhand stress because of all of the things that kept happening. I was just like, oh god, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with anything like this anymore, because no matter how much planning you do and no matter like how perfectly you have things down, there's always some kind of variable that just sneaks up on you, and like something just doesn't go right, and you have to kind of just get over it and move on, otherwise it can ruin your whole day. So I felt bad because like way more than one thing was going wrong for them. Oh, also really fun in here is that Charlie's mom is a comic artist, and she draws a comic called Grant Central Station because the family name is the Grants, and she's been doing it for years and years throughout her entire children's lives, and the characters are like very clearly based on her children, and it's a slice of life comic, and it also touches upon some other things that happen like within their neighborhood, and it was a really cute story. So there were some times where there were like comic strips that were inserted into the book, and you got to see like a little bit of their slice of life, and I thought that really added to the story. I think another reason that I loved this book so much is because the structure of the Grant family was very similar to Andrew's family. There are 3 boys and 2 girls that are all siblings, so as you can imagine, it's kind of like chaotic and crazy there. Just chaos because there's so many people. So it reminded me of going to like Andrew's house for holidays and having everyone there, and it's so much fun because, you know, it's such like a big gathering and everyone's so close, and it just really like reminded me of that. The one thing that I will say is that if you are looking for a romance book, this is not that. I always expect there to be like some kind of cute romance in Morgan Matson's books, and while there was like the hint of one, that was definitely not the main focus of this one. This was way more like a self-discovery coming of age type novel than it was a contemporary romance. So yeah, so it was just kind of like a bit of a departure from Morgan Matson's other books, but I thought that it was great. Like I really loved it. And then this was just one thing that I like picked out while I was reading, but toward the very end of the book, there was this one line, one sentence, and I was like, I wonder if that was an intentional Yuri on Ice reference. I'm not positive if it was, but it was there, and I interpreted it that way, so I really hope that Morgan did that on purpose. I might have to tweet at her and ask because I'm very curious now. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really fun read, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo, and I'm so excited that I finally read this one. I've been wanting to read it like since I got it, but it's heavy, so I didn't want to carry it with me. But I made it a point to wake up extra early before work, and I would read like one story per morning, and it was so good. I'm so glad that I did that. I have to say that I truly loved every single story in this collection, which I find is like really hard to believe. Usually with anthology type things, there's usually like 1 or 2 stories that you don't like as much, but I felt like every single story in here was just so well done. For those who don't know, Language of Thorns is pretty much a book of like fairy tales and fables that the parents in the Grisha world would tell their children as like cautionary tales. Leigh Bardugo just like gets fairy tales. She just wrote everything so perfectly. It really had the vibe of a true fairy tale, and then there would be like one sentence in each of them that would like tie it to the Grisha universe. It's very much a fairy tale that you could read and could be applicable to as a lesson to someone in any kind of setting. It was just that one sentence that would tie it back. So if you have not yet read any of the Grisha books or like Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, you can totally read this and you will not at all be confused. It will still make perfect sense to you. I would even recommend doing so because this book was just so good. She just really has a knack for capturing like the essence of fairy tales. And despite like the subtle nods to the Grisha universe, they all very much feel like tales in their own right. Like I said, it totally holds up as a standalone for somebody who has never read any of her other work. Each of these stories teaches an important lesson, and while some of them had surprising twists, if you are familiar with fairy tales, you will probably be able to see where like which direction some of them are going in. My favorite by far was the last story in this book, which was called When Water Sang Fire, and that one was about mermaids. Oh man, that was phenomenal. That was probably like one of the best pieces of mermaid fiction that I've ever read in my entire life. It was so good. I have already told many people that they need to go and just read that one story because it was like totally just blew me away. Overall, I gave this whole collection 5 out of 5 stars, but I will also tell you the individual ratings that I gave for each story within here. So I gave the first story, Amaya and the Thornwood, 5 out of 5 stars. I gave the Too Clever Fox 4.5 out of 5 stars. I gave the Witch of Duva 4.5 out of 5 stars. I gave Little Knife 4 stars. I gave The Soldier Prince 3.5 stars. And I gave When Water Sang Fire 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. And this is just a beautiful book too. Everything about this book is so gorgeous. Then I read my second classic of January, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is huge. This took me most of the month to read. I can't even tell you how long this took me. I have a lot of thoughts on this book. This is my first Bronte book that I've ever read, so I was really excited to dive into it. I was completely wrong about the synopsis in my TBR video. It follows a girl named Jane, and she does become a governess for a school, but there is so much else that goes on, and it's really more of like a coming of age story and like a self-discovery type novel, and also focusing on a woman who is trying to get more out of her life than Victorian society has deemed appropriate for young women. I like that Jane is a little bit of a troublemaker. She doesn't necessarily follow all of the rules. She kind of like questions things and tends to speak her mind, which is a good thing. I think the beginning of this dragged a little bit for me. So when she was with her aunt and then when she went to become a governess, I felt like those chapters were a little bit slow, a little bit hard for me to get into, but I started enjoying it much more once Rochester showed up and all of the shenanigans that happened with him started happening. There were moments in this book that were so funny that I was like actually laughing. And I have to say that I really admire Jane's character for wanting to be wealthy in her own right and to have more equal footing before entering any kind of relationship. I thought that was a really admirable characteristic. I think people can learn a lot from Jane. Gotta say, was not expecting Rochester to have so much baggage. Wow. Overall, I would just say, like, I just love Jane as a character. I think that she just keeps getting better and better as the story goes on. I think she is wonderfully self-reliant and her mindset is extremely forward-thinking for a woman of her time. So I really admired like all of the choices that she made throughout the book, and I really feel like this is an important book and I'm so glad that it was published. But I will say that it took me like so much longer than I was expecting to get through. So while I enjoyed the fundamentals of the story and there were moments that I did really enjoy reading, this did feel like more of a chore to me than me reading for enjoyment. I was definitely reading it because I want to have read this book, with my mixed feelings on my enjoyment level, but the positive outlook on the message and just Jane as a character. I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, I read Reign of the Earth by A.C. Goggin, and this is the first book in a new fantasy trilogy called The Elemente. Alexa and Rachel both read and loved this book, and they were actually the ones that pushed this arc upon me so that I could read it after them, and I'm thankful that they did because I did really enjoy this story. This is a dark Eastern inspired fantasy, and as you know, I am always interested in elemental magic, so that had immediately like piqued my interest when I heard that. And I swear, anything with elemental magic just makes me think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, so this reminded me of Avatar. There's actually a girl in it who can control water that is named Kata, so I just kept referring to her as the waterbender. In Avatar, Katara is the waterbender, and yeah, it was hard not to just think of her as Katara. Our main character is Shalia, and she enters into an arranged marriage with a horrible man who is the king of another settlement within their country. And the reason that she goes through with this marriage is because she's hoping to bring peace for her people. But the king that she marries is a piece of garbage. Believe me when I say that marrying this man was the ultimate sacrifice. Pretty much cringed anytime that I had to read scenes of the two of them together. He was just really manipulative, really abusive, and I did not like that she had to be tied to this person. Another one of the problems with their marriage is that Shalia discovers that she might also be an Elemente, and the king that she's married is looking to eradicate all Elemente from their society. So you can see why that would be kind of a problem. There were some characters in here that I really enjoyed, like Galen, who is the king's brother, and he is the captain of the guard, as well as Shalia's brother, Kairos. I really enjoyed him too. I will say though, I felt like the story was kind of predictable, and there wasn't really anything that set it apart from other YA fantasy that I've been reading. So as much as I enjoyed it while I was reading it, it isn't something that left a lasting impression on me. And it just kind of reminded me of a mix of like The Wrath and the Dawn and Avatar: The Last Airbender. So if you're interested in reading like a fun fantasy with elemental magic, I would suggest picking this one up. And I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. And that's it. Those are the next 5 books that I've read. As of the beginning of February, I was at 15 books read. I didn't get to film for a little bit, so you can expect another wrap up coming shortly because I'm like closing in on finishing another 5 already. Oh, also I wanted to ask you guys, so in wrap up videos now, I have started holding the books so that you can see like the spines of the books that I'm going to be wrapping up in the video. Let me know if you like that or if you prefer like the turned around spines, or just tell me what you fancy. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned. I'm sure that a lot of you will have a lot to say about Jane Eyre, since that is one that has been around for quite a while now. That's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!